San Jacinto College is Dr. Parker Williams' life. She gave everything to it. She received a lot of benefit from it. And she was available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She believed in the open door policy, and she meant exactly that. She was on the campus, she knew what was going on, and of course, again, we were a small campus, so it made it a lot easier, but she was available. You were able to call her at her home if you needed to, and she had no problems with that.
She was really more like a grandmother or like a benevolent aunt who ran the show. You know, she was our matriarch in essence. So there was a very familial kind of an atmosphere that was just very much family there. I would say she was a pioneer. She was a leader amongst women in Texas. She was only one of 3 women in her small town of Van to actually go to college in the day, and that was pretty much unheard of.
So my first recollection of Parker Williams was actually helping a friend with a garage sale. And my friend said, "Hey, there's Parker Williams." And I said, "Who?" And she said, "Parker Williams, you know, the president of the South Campus." And I said, "Where is he?" And she said, "No, it's a she, and she's over there." "That's the president of South Campus?" And she said, "Yeah, that's her." And so that's my first recollection of who Parker Williams was.
Well, I came to the college in 1984. I really was brought here by Tom Sewell and Ron Rucker, but Parker was my immediate supervisor. She was my boss. At that time, she was president at the fairly new South Campus, and I was the Dean of Student Services. The college really was her family. She had sort of a tough exterior, but a soft interior. Okay. Parker was one of those administrators. Inevitably, her bark was a lot worse than her bite. She did have a soft spot for people and for the college. Very, very unique. Again, she, didn't really have family, any children, and so this institution became really her life, and she was dedicated to it.
Well, in 1991, I applied for a position as a testing coordinator over at the South Campus, and I interviewed. And of course, I had to interview with Parker Williams there, and she brought me into her office that morning, and I sat down at her desk, and she peered over the desk, and she said, "Mr. Weiland, what makes you qualified to work as a testing coordinator at this campus?" And I said, "Well, really, I have very little experience in that regard, ma'am, but I would like to give it a try." And she had that interview with me for about 30 minutes or so, and she very much indicated to me that I wasn't just applying for a job, I was applying to be a member of her family, and that's the way it felt, and I got a good, strong, warm feeling from that, and she hired me, and she swore my allegiance to South Campus and to the students there, and that day I was hired. I've been there 21 years.
But I thought, well, I really need to meet this lady, formally. I had met her informally at the garage sale, but I wanted to meet her formally. So I called and asked for an appointment and went in on my spring break time. Back then, the administrators worked the first couple days of spring break and the faculty were off. So I went in and met with her and Dr. Rundell, who was the vice president at the time. And the first thing that she said to me when we got in the room was, "Well, if you think you're coming over here and you're just going to sit and put your feet up, you might as well stay at Central." And I said, "Well, no, ma'am, I'm here on my spring break to find out what it is that you want to see happen in the department and, what service I can be to South Campus." And immediately she said, "Well, then, welcome aboard, and here's what I'd like to see, here's what kind of vision I have. And we had a wonderful conversation. And so at that point I said, well, this lady is special. She immediately warmed up and asked me about my family, about how long I'd lived in the South Belt area once she found out I was a South Belt resident. And it was a very nice conversation. And so I reported in August to the South Campus and started my tenure as the department chair.
Parker Williams interviewed me, and that's how I came to South Campus. I was working part-time for North Campus. I understood that there was a position available, and we were the original faculty. Not only were we faculty members, we had to be department chairman, division chairman, maintenance crew, police officers, and everything else, because it was a small school. It was just beginning. And so we were interviewed with that thought process in mind, that we would be willing to do whatever needed to be done. The interview took approximately 4 hours. And when it was all finished, well, after you've sat in an interview for 4 hours, you are in a hurry. And so I headed right out of the interview and into the ladies' room. And into the ladies' room, I thought, okay, stop here. And all of a sudden, this voice comes in the door and says, "Dr. Robbins, are you in here?" And she said, "We want to send you to Dr. Spencer," which meant you probably had the job. But I'll never forget that, because I was in the ladies' room when that took place, when I was hired.
A friend of mine's father told me that when I came out to San Jac that I needed to go visit with Dr. Parker Williams. And so, strangely enough, I did not know that Parker Williams was a woman at all. And a teenage kid, I was kind of oblivious to it. But anyway, I came out and I met this dynamic lady who was the head librarian. But she was also a counselor to anybody who wanted to come. It was a good experience, because when I visited with her, the first thing she asked me was, she said, "Teddy, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Dr. Williams, I dreamed all my life of going to the University of Texas. And I would like to be able to go to San Jac long enough to get my grades up to the place where I can transfer and do that." And she looked at me and she said, "Well," she said, "you can do that, but," she said, "you'll have to do what I tell you to do, and you'll have to work hard."
When I think of Parker Williams, it's not the interesting personality traits I think of so much, but I think about her sensitivity to her employees, her willingness to help when necessary, and her big heart.
She was just very, very unique, very dedicated, very hardworking, very funny. And you've never lived till you've been fussed at by Parker Williams.
Anytime there was dance music on, you'd see Parker up there dancing.
Her favorite hobby was visiting garage sales.
She knew where they all were and what she could get, and she found all these bargains.
Everywhere you went in the community, you'd see Parker.
I think more than anything, I had the ability in the drive, and I needed somebody to say, "You can do this," and I believe it. And that's what she said.